Hey, I'm back. So, we are going to talk just a little bit more today about how to find a therapist that's the right fit for you. That, if I had to pick one thing that I heard the most often out of all of the questions I ever get, that would probably be it across all, whether personal, whether professional, whether working for an insurance company, whether working in private practice. Everybody has the question of how do I find a therapist that I actually want to go talk to? So we've already started this conversation, and today I want to talk a little bit about the 15-minute consultation call. Some therapists offer longer ones, some therapists don't offer them, but I do. I offer a free 15-minute consultation call. And really, the purpose of this call, which I mentioned last time, is to get an idea about whether you feel comfortable working with this person. So it's good to be prepared. Certainly, there's an argument to be made for if you aren't prepared, you can kind of see how you guys just gel together and have a conversation. And if you are prepared, however, you can get some of those questions answered before your first session, which is especially helpful if you don't have all of this money laying around that you can spend willy-nilly on first sessions with therapists to get some of that out of the way in that call so you know really whether to weed out that therapist or not. So here's an example. So one thing for sure that I recommend is, even if you're super nervous to make these calls and do 15-minute consultations with therapists, like I said, most offer them for free and sometimes even longer than 15 minutes. And I still recommend that you do that call yourself. Most therapists, and now I'm talking just about adults, obviously. Kids who are under 18, I don't work with them. So, but most therapists are going to want to hear and have that call directly with you, because it's not just an information gathering session. It's also like, it's not just, hey, what's your insurance and what do you want to work on? And all those things are there. It's also about the goodness of fit between you and the potential therapist. So you want to be in that conversation to assess if this person is right for you. The other things that I would definitely recommend, if you've been in therapy before, take just a couple minutes to think about what has worked for you in therapy before and what hasn't worked for you in therapy before. Take a minute and consider what deal breakers are. Like, I do not want a Christian therapist, or I must have a Christian therapist, right? So get your deal breakers written down before you have that 15-minute consultation call. And if you have specific questions for the therapist, now a lot of therapists understandably won't answer personal questions on that 15-minute consultation, but if something is a deal breaker for you and you don't know if it's a personal question or not, if it's a deal breaker, put it on the list. If it's something that you don't really need to know, maybe leave it off the list, right? Now, an example about that is, if the religion thing, right? If that's a deal breaker for you, some therapists won't share that because it's not a part of their therapy. And some therapists, it is absolutely a part of their therapy. If you're queer and you want a queer therapist, if you're cisgender woman and you want a cisgender woman therapist, all of those things are things that people have been known to have preferences about. If you had a therapist once and you did a lot of mindfulness and you did a lot of breathing and that triggered the fuck out of you, pardon my French, then maybe that's a question for your deal breaker list. Like, I do not want a therapist who's going to tell me how to breathe, because a lot of us do that. I am one of them. So things that worked for you in the past, things that definitely didn't work for you in the past, deal breakers that you must have in order to be comfortable with a therapist, deal breakers that you absolutely will not tolerate in a therapist, and making that call yourself. I personally, I will answer general questions for somebody who's calling just to kind of suss me out for somebody else. I'll answer general questions about my practice, general questions about the types of folks that I see and my fee scale and what types of insurances I take. But I'm not going to get into, for example, if your friend Joe calls me because you, Sheila, need a therapist, and Joe's like, here's Sheila's story. You tell me about how you would work with Sheila. I will not have that conversation with somebody else. Even if I don't have a therapeutic relationship with Sheila right now, I'm not going to have a conversation about a possible therapeutic relationship with Joe, because that's unethical, number one. And number two, it's you. It's yucky. Yeah, blah. There's all sorts of triangulation and crud that could get in the way there, right? So and I think you'll find a lot of therapists will not have that that would be clinical conversation with somebody who is not the person seeking therapy. So while I sit here and think about if there's something that I missed for that 15-minute consultation, if there's a couple people watching right now live, if you have a question about, I won't call you out, but if you have a question that you're like, hey, how would I know this? Or what about X, Y, and Z for finding a therapist? Please write in the comments. I would be happy to answer direct questions. Because sometimes I think with therapists, like when I worked for the big insurance company, yes, I did used to work for one. A huge part of my job was, as a case manager, was talking on the phone to people and helping them become consumers of therapy. So some of this stuff I think like, oh, that's second nature. Everybody knows that. And then I have to check myself, right? Because that's just my lens through which I see the world. And I answer the question a lot. So I just kind of, if I'm not mindful, I could start to think that people just know these things, and they don't. Just like I wouldn't necessarily know, the best way to get an audition on Broadway because that's not my line of business, right? So pick the brains of the experts who know their stuff. I know a few people I could probably ask about the audition thing, but um, and they know me for therapy. So let's see, 15-minute consultation. 15-minute consultation call, like I said, sometimes 20, 30. Yes, becoming a consumer of therapy. How do you do that? So asking yourself the question, what is it, like, if you're coming to me, you're hiring me for a job, right? What is it how will you know that that job is complete? How will you know, what is it that you're hiring me to do, right? Like, let's get on the same page about what our job contract is. Because somebody could come in and say, I have anxiety and I want to deal with anxiety in therapy. And for that one person, what they mean by deal with anxiety is totally different than the next person who says, I want to deal with my anxiety. Or if I were to say, I want to deal with my anxiety, it means something different. What are the measurables? That's where I become a little bit of a geeky behaviorist, but it's helpful to know what the measurables are, because how will you know when you get there? And oftentimes, especially with mental and emotional health, we kind of feel like we've always felt the way that we're feeling in this exact moment. Does that make sense? So if I'm particularly balanced and happy right now and have no complaints, and I'm kind of like, yeah, I'm content, I might be like, yeah, I've always kind of been content. I can remember something sometimes when I haven't been content, but for the most part, I'm pretty balanced and content. Even though if you were to catch me maybe a week from now, I might be like, nail biting, oh my God, I'm so anxious. Why am I so anxious all the time? Right? We tend to, it's state dependent memory. We tend to remember how we're feeling as the way we've always felt and the way we always will feel, even if that's not necessarily true, which is why measurables are important. So you're doing the 15-minute consultation, you're doing the first therapy session. Get on the same page with the therapist about what the job is that you're hiring them to do and how you will know when it is successful. In 6 months, if therapy is successful, how will your life look different? Make sense? All right. Now I see there are no questions. If you have any questions or there is something you would like to see me do a Facebook Live on, as you know, if you've seen me before, I love these things. They're fabulous. I don't have to obsess over editing anything. Um, write in, email me, write in. What is this, 1986? Write in via your electronic device and let me know what questions you have about therapy, about coaching, about Reiki, about how I can't seem to wait, how I can't seem to iron curtains. It's a queer thing, I know. Some people understand. So until then, have a wonderful week, Facebook land.